story. And we spent another couple of years selling it around the world and you know, touring with it around the world and all that kind of stuff. But we wrote a script right after Undead, and that was the script for Daybreakers. And Lionsgate were very keen. Lionsgate was the company that bought Undead, and they really wanted to do another picture with us. And so we pitched them this idea, and they loved it, and we developed it with them for 2 years. And a lot of that time we were just trying to convince them that we could do it. Out of 2 years playing in that sandbox, you know, like just asking lots of questions like, how would you drive if you're a vampire and needed to drive during the day? And then how would you, if you cast the reflection, how would you do your hair and makeup in the morning? And it's like, well, cameras, and those sorts of things evolved just through just playing around in the world once we kind of knew what we wanted to do. And through that playing around, the characters started to develop. But it was certainly, we came up with the premise and the ending first, and then it started to evolve and the characters started to show themselves. But it took a while. Shorts, when we were starting out, we did maybe 20 short films. And we felt naively, once we got out of uni, we were ready to make movies. We were really young and stupid, you know, like we weren't ready. We spent a couple of years doing ads, and we got to work with bigger crews, and we got to learn equipment and how to actually work on a professional set. Then we kind of took the money that we were making in ads and threw it into our first movie. And I don't think anybody on Undead had ever been on a feature film before. So it was that was such a massive learning curve. And then on Daybreakers, it was also such a massive learning curve. And I think that it doesn't happen quickly because it is so expensive. Mentioned in the film, but it's in a news story about what actually happened to the vampire wildlife. And like, they turn into vampires, like deer or something like that. They turn into vampires, and then they wake up in the morning and they burst into flames and they burn down forests. And we had this whole story about how a large number of the forests were destroyed because of these vampiric animals running into the daylight and causing all these fires. And you see it a little bit in the film too. They drive through a burnt out forest, and that was all part of that story that unfortunately we couldn't get it into the film because it just became too expensive.
That sounds cool. I mean, I'm just wondering about you getting to vampire cockatoos or vampire kangaroos.
Yeah.
Vampire koalas. I think everybody wants to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. But we like the usual suspects like Kubrick and Spielberg and Zemeckis and all those guys. But David Cronenberg is the filmmaker that I particularly love because he always has such interesting ideas. Even if the films don't necessarily always work, the ideas are always really interesting. I love that it's always about the inner monster, and he does that so well. We have lots of conversations with Ethan about Star Wars.
Oh, really?
Just in terms of story structure and things like that.
Where George went wrong, that kind of stuff?
Well, no, it was more just about character and just because we're such big fans of that kind of hero myth structure, and we would talk about it in those terms quite a lot. And it's great because he's such a geek too. And it's weird because I'd say that the least geeky out of the cast is probably Claudia, who's actually been in a Star Wars movie. I remember, I think Claudia was telling me, like, she's with Natalie Portman in that scene that's cut out of the movie, and she says, we're washing dishes in a Star Wars movie, or we're whatever she was doing. She said, this is never going to end up in the movie.
Watches the exploding head, burst out laughing, or just goes, you know, ooh, that's disgusting, I don't know why I came in here.
Yeah.
So it's exactly the kind of response that you want.
Yeah.
Do you actually walk that line when you're writing the script and say, oh, it's too much? Sorry, Pete. Sorry, Mike. Let's do it.
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit. You kind of sit there and like, you wonder whether the audience is going to go with you on that. That if you take it to that extreme, like people exploding and all that stuff, but then you still try to have, you know, more intimate moments, you wonder whether you can bring the audience back down to that. And some people would say that you can't, and we failed. But then other people get it and they love it. So it's a fine line. It's all about your sensibilities and whether you can handle those extremes. Yeah.
back and forth. Well, I mean, I guess that answers the question as to whether you're writing it just for you or for each other and or the audience. So you really do incorporate.
Well, you've got to write for yourself. You have to write it for yourself. But then I always assume that what I like, other people like as well. So you've got to have your audience in mind. You've always got to, because movies are so expensive to make. And if you're just saying, I'm making it for myself and nobody else, and I don't care if nobody sees it, I think you're a fool. We said, well, let's just try it. Let's send the script to his agent and see what happens. His agent read it, he liked it, he sent it to Ethan. Ethan loved the script. And we went to New York, we met him, and he's like, okay, I'm in. And we thought, wow, Ethan's never done a horror film before. But Ethan loves John Carpenter movies. You know, he made a remake of a John Carpenter movie, Assault on Precinct 13. So once Ethan said yes, it kind of legitimized the film.
You don't have to spend all your time in LA to make Hollywood movies.
No, you don't. You don't. You just have to spend some time there, and then it's great if you can try and bring it back here, because then it's far away from there. You know, which can be a great way to make movies, is to do it at home. You know, we've got such great. Obviously, we've got so many great actors, and the crews are fantastic. The facilities are here. You know, it makes a whole bunch of sense. It's just hopefully the Americans can sort out their damn economy, and then it'll continue to make sense.
What happens when there isn't a single drop left?
These are desperate times.
We only have enough blood to sustain our population till the end of the month.